I found out my wife cheated on me with my best friend and had his child, then planned the ultimate revenge before my wife, Jenna's behavior began to unravel. Our marriage had its fair share of challenges, but it wasn't all bad. We met in college, fell in love, and tied the knot shortly after graduation. Those early years were full of hope. We dreamed of building a loving family and pursuing successful careers. But life isn't as simple as dreams. Jenna worked a low-paying job at the university bookstore while I ran a used car dealership. The financial stress and long hours chipped away at our happiness. Still, we tried to hold on to the love that once felt unbreakable. Over time, though, the cracks became impossible to ignore. Jenna's mood swings and constant irritability created a tense household. Even our 13-year-old daughter, Carrie, retreated into herself. I did my best to juggle work and family, but it felt like I was fighting a losing battle. Eventually, Jenna's criticism and hostility became unbearable. The woman who once stood by my side turned into someone I barely recognized. One day, I reached my breaking point. "I'm leaving," I said firmly. "Go. Don't come back," she replied coldly, without a trace of emotion. That night, I drove aimlessly, replaying our 14 years of marriage in my head. I wondered how it all fell apart. The answer came just days later, and it changed everything. The bombshell discovery. It happened one evening at a local restaurant. Exhausted and avoiding home yet again, I sat in a booth, lost in thought, when I overheard two men talking nearby. "So you've been messing around with the boss wife for a while now?" one of them asked. The other man chuckled. "Even before they got married. Hell, I entertained her on their wedding day. And he never had a clue." The voice belonged to George, my best friend. The man I trusted with everything, including my business. My heart sank. I wanted to stand up and confront him, but instead, I quietly left the restaurant, my stomach twisting in knots. The truth begins to unfold that night. While Jenna slept, I checked her phone. Nothing seemed out of place. No incriminating texts, no secret calls. But her recent hostility and George's smug words gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The next day, George came to work, making his usual Polish jokes. Normally, I'd laugh it off, but this time, I snapped. "George, what do you actually know about Poland? Or anything else for that matter?" He looked stunned but shrugged it off. I couldn't let him suspect anything, so I buried my anger and started plotting my next move. Unraveling the lie, I called a private investigator who suggested tracking Jenna's phone. That night, I installed a discreet app while she slept. Over the next few days, I kept tabs on her movements. She went to work, ran errands, and came home, nothing unusual. But my suspicions lingered. One evening, after Jenna fell asleep, I went to Carrie's room and took a DNA swab while she snored peacefully. I did the same for myself. If George's claims were true, I needed proof. The wait for the results was agonizing. Finally, on a late Wednesday night, the head of the university's science department handed me the envelope. "The samples are unrelated," he said, confirming my worst fear. Carrie wasn't my biological daughter. The perfect revenge anger simmered beneath the surface, threatening to consume me whole. Jenna, the woman I thought I knew, had lied, cheated, and stolen years of my life. And George, my so-called best friend, had betrayed me in the most vicious way possible. I couldn't confront them yet. I needed proof. Hard evidence of their affair that would leave no room for excuses. So I waited. I bided my time, meticulously preparing for the perfect revenge. First, I secured my finances, paid off debts, moved assets into my name, and set up a plan to sever ties with Jenna completely. Then, I laid the trap. I played the dutiful husband, suggesting family dinners and outings to keep her off guard. But behind the scenes, I tracked her every move, monitored her phone. I knew she thought she was safe. She was wrong. It wasn't long before the tracker pinged, leading me straight to a cheap motel. I stood outside, heart hammering, camera in hand, ready to expose the truth. The final confrontation, the betrayal by Jenna and George, shattered everything I had once believed. But it also gave me clarity. I filed for divorce, armed with the evidence that would devastate her. I fought for custody of Carrie, not because she was mine by blood, but because she was mine in every way that mattered. Jenna and George, they lost it all. My revenge wasn't about hurting them. It was about reclaiming control of my life and proving that betrayal wouldn't break me. If she went somewhere else, I left her behind, but not before driving to Albuquerque with a new plan. The goal? To purchase 20 cars, including a Mazda Miata, and have them transported back to my lot. George was out of the picture now, and I had to keep this quiet. Had never see it coming. By 9 a.m., I checked into the Best Western. Despite owning a successful business, I wasn't about to splurge on luxury. Simple comforts would do for now. But sleep? That was elusive. My thoughts spiraled back to Jenna. How could she sleep with George on our wedding day? How had she kept that affair alive for years? The truth hit me hard. I'd been blind. Our early struggles, her difficult pregnancy, the sacrifices, it all felt meaningless now. George's treachery was unbearable. Was the affair still going? I couldn't stop asking myself. The next day at the auction, I struck some incredible deals, reigniting my passion for the business. It was a temporary escape from the chaos in my mind. But when I met with my lawyer, reality hit hard. Divorce would cost me half of everything, plus child support for a child who wasn't even mine. So, I pivoted. I'd wait. I'd keep the house, protect my assets, and focus on survival. Long-term planning became my new goal. Back home, the tension thickened. Jenna's disdain for me mirrored Carrie's growing attitude. It became obvious Carrie wasn't my daughter. George's influence had poisoned both of them. Jenna's mockery cut deeper with each passing day. When I brought home the red Miata, she scoffed. "Why do you need this car?" "We need something for Carrie," she sneered. The car wasn't for me, it was for a client. But her attitude stung. Carrie's insult cut deeper. I don't want to be seen with a Polish used car salesman. It wasn't just disrespect. It was a betrayal, and it was dripping with George's influence. The turning point one night, Jenna confronted me, feigning concern. "Are you hurt that we didn't get excited about the car? Or are you just being childish?" Her smugness fueled the fire in my chest. "You two don't want to pole around, so back off," I snapped. The Kaminsky house had become a battleground, cold and silent in the aftermath of that storm. The trap closes and I moved out quietly, not alerting anyone to my plans. George eagerly awaited the cars, thinking he could make a quick profit. Little did he know, I had already made sure he would never touch them. By the time they arrived, he approached me with his usual cocky attitude. "When can I start working on them?" he asked. "You want," I replied, calm but firm. The new owner's taking them in a different direction. New owner? George's face fell. Yeah, George. I sold the business, I said, enjoying the shock on his face. It's effective immediately. The words hit him like a sucker punch. It sold the company to a holding company it created, leaving Jenna with nothing. George? Jobless. Humiliated. Days later, Jenna discovered it moved out. Her rage was explosive. But I didn't flinch. I'm done, I said, emotionless. You can keep the house. I'll cover utilities and taxes, but I'm not coming back. Her panic shifted to desperation as she realized I wouldn't be forced into a quick divorce. But it was too late. It already set the wheels in motion. The final blow. George had ruined my life once. He wouldn't get a second chance. As for Jenna, she was left to face the wreckage of her own doing. And me? I was rebuilding on my terms. My business, my dignity, my future, everything was in my hands. I made sure she can't take the business, I told Anna, pacing my office, excitement bubbling up. Let her try to untangle that mess. By the time she figures it out, the money will be long gone. As for me, I'll survive on consulting and a few sales commissions. Anna nodded, a mix of curiosity and concern in her eyes. And the new signage. We're changing the name to Graceless Auto, I said, a cryptic smile tugging at my lips. Graceless? She echoed, confused. Someday I'll tell you why, I said. For now, just trust me. I left my old life behind, heading for the open road. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. It was Jenna. The final conversation. Hey, I answered, keeping my tone casual. Kurt, what's going on? Her voice was laced with uncertainty. Not much. Heading to Albuquerque, I said flatly. To do what? Pick up a car, I replied, giving nothing away. So, George's story isn't true? George called you? I feigned surprise. She hesitated. He's worried. He said you sold the business. Of course he did, I muttered, sarcasm dripping. Real loyal, huh? Shouldn't we have talked about this first? She pressed. It's my company, I shot back. I can sell it whenever I want. Her panic grew. What about the mortgage? What are we going to do? I paid off the house with the sale. Utilities, taxes, that's it. You're welcome. And food? Insurance? Gas? Her panic rose. Maybe you should pick up some extra shifts, I shot back, dripping with sarcasm. Kurt, when are you coming home? Am not. Silence. Then she whispered, What? You told me not to come back. So am not. The line went dead. The final showdown months later, I returned to Silver City. The dealership was thriving, thanks to Anna. But when I walked up to the house, it was clear. This wasn't the life I had envisioned. I knocked on the door. Carrie opened it, her face lighting up. Daddy? Hey, kiddo. Is your mom home? Jenna stormed out, fury blazing in her eyes. What the hell are you doing here? Just passing through, I said coolly. She snapped. You have no right to barge in here. This is my house, I said firmly. And only my name's on the deed. Her face drained of color. I've had enough of this, I said. You're out. End of the month. And just like that, my revenge was complete. The last word. Jenna had her chance. Now, I walked away with everything I had earned. No more lies. No more betrayal. Just peace.